All right, everybody, welcome to Project Herpetoculture, episode 6. We have an awesome guest today, Armen Keuylian of HerpTime fame. Before we get to introducing Armin, I'd love to do a little bit of housekeeping and first just say thank you to Dylan at the Animals at Home Network for hosting us so graciously. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to my longtime best man, Charlie Davenport, for our intro music. Legend. And for helping edit our episodes and help Phil and I kind of find our sea legs with this new medium. So to introduce myself, I'm Roy Arthur Blodgett, co-hosted by the inimitable Philip Leitz, as always. Woo. And yeah, today we're going to be talking with Armen Keuylian of HerpTime. Armin, welcome to Project Herpetoculture. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. Very excited.
Cool. Yeah, we're excited to have you. You're definitely somebody who we've been wanting to talk to for quite some time. So it's awesome that we got this worked out.
Definitely.
Yeah, to begin, I'm curious. I don't know a whole lot about your background in herpetoculture. So that's kind of a standard spiel kind of thing. And usually we like to deviate from that, but because I don't really have much orientation, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you came to find yourself in this wild trade of ours.
Yeah, for sure. So, I've been into reptiles ever since I could remember. Before I could even talk, really, my mom was playing Steve Irwin for me, and that was kind of the demise. My parents got me my first snake on my 5th Christmas, and then my 6th birthday, I got a leopard gecko, and then I can't remember a time after that I never had a reptile in the house. Now I have none in my house. I have a whole place full of them. But I've been breeding. My first time I ever bred anything was probably when I was, I think, 9 or 10, which, funnily enough, not very hard to breed, but I got some eggs from a green anole. And then after that, some Western fence lizards. And I was into fish a lot. So I bred guppies and cichlids and stuff like that when I was still in middle school and stuff like that. And then it just kind of always carried on into everything. Even in college, my dorm was full of, I built leopard gecko racks under my bed, even though I wasn't supposed to have anything in there. And yeah, wherever I could, I would fit in reptiles into my life. So it just kind of evolved into this. And once this has always been the goal ever since I was a little kid, but I had another job. And once I was able to build this up a little with savings and also based on the money I made from my breeding, I always poured it straight back into this. And once it started paying off for itself, I quit my day job and went crazy with the lizards, and now here we are. So that's kind of the short story of how my life's gone with the reptiles.
So you have if I'm understanding that correctly, your facility is separate from your home then?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I made that switch like 3 years ago, and it's terrifying. I don't know how long you've been separate from your home, but my God, is it still freaky for you, or have you gotten used to that?
Freaky as in like the not being right there next to them, or freaky as in the overhead?
Yes.
Yeah. The more freak. Well, this is basic. I wake up, take a shower, brush my teeth, grab a coffee, and I'm here. Mm-hmm. I go grab lunch, and then I rarely even get dinner, and I just go home, and if I'm too sweaty, I take another shower and go back to bed. So it's like I'm here most of my waking hours. So it's basically my home. I have a couch. Sometimes if I'm up too late, I just pass out on there for an hour or two and then keep going. So
that's awesome.
That part isn't that bad for me, but the overhead is the scariest part.
Totally.
Especially I'm doing this in California, so it's like the rent's crazy, the electricity is crazy, everything here is crazy. So it's it's definitely an undertaking, but it's worth it to me, and I know it's been paying off, and I know it'll continue to pay off, and it's very gratifying, at least for me. I mean, there's no other way I'd want to spend my life. So even if I make no money barely, it's worth it to me.
So how long ago was it when you left your standard day job to go full-time reptiles?
About a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I've been heavily breeding the past maybe 4 or 5 years, but a year ago is when I really I quit my job and started doing this.
What was just randomly, what was your job prior to? What was the day job?
I did social media and that's also where I get some of my, I wouldn't say expertise, but it's how I do good on my social media. I used to do social media for other creators and influencers and stuff like that.
Oh, nice. That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I still do some photography and some video work and on the side to make ends meet sometimes, because breeding anoles doesn't necessarily pay the bills yet. So I still do some freelance stuff and some side stuff, but that's definitely a minute part of what I'm doing.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Thank you.
So yeah, I mean,
whoop,
go
sorry,
ahead, Phil.
go ahead. Nope, it's all you.
Okay, I was gonna say, well, there's a bunch of different things I want to talk to you about, but I wonder if we could get like, I think that we've got maybe one of the questions I had was like, yeah, what is your kind of daily routine? I had a feeling that you were rolling out of the bag into the facility and diving into it, which sounds like that's accurate. But so I don't know how in depth we have to get into that, although I am curious to get into all the granular detail.
Yeah, we can.
That comes up. But I'm also just really curious. I mean, obviously, you have this focus on the genus Anolis, which is an incredible, massive family of lizards. And I'm really curious, like, why is everyone sleeping on anoles? And how are you going to change that? And what caused you to awaken to the world of Anoles in the way that you have?
Yeah. So why is everyone sleeping on them? I don't know. I've always loved them. I mean, ever since I was, little and would go to PetSmart or Petco and see the green anoles. I mean, what's cooler than a bright green lizard? I don't know. I mean, I know they were like $3 or $4 back then. Now they're like 7 or 8, but still, it's amazing to see such a brightly colored animal. And I think that's where everyone, not necessarily sleeping on them, but they kind of brush them off, because most people that are into reptiles or lizards, at least, have probably kept a green anole in the beginning, and they were wild caught and they were dehydrated at Petco, and they probably had parasites and died within the first month, and just left it, not necessarily a bad taste in their mouth, but just like, oh, I mean, if you Google anole lifespan, it says 1 to 3 years, and it's like, that's not true at all. It's just because everyone kills them or doesn't know how to take care of them, or they're just wild caught ones. So they're definitely underappreciated. And like you said, it's a huge genus. It's the biggest, has the most species in any genus of animal, whether that's reptiles, fish, insects. They have the most species. There's over close to 450, and that doesn't include subspecies. And each one has an amazing amount of subspecies. I have Anolis roquette here. There's 6 subspecies, and within the subspecies, there's localities too. So it's just an insane genus of lizards, and they're just so awesome. I've always loved them. You asked how I was kind of awakened to them, but I always loved them. Like I said, the first lizard I ever got eggs from was a green anole, and I haven't kept them since then, like consistently, but I've always had something going on with anoles. I've always been into them, whether it was night anoles or other like more exotic anoles that I would still find and keep. And then once I started really breeding stuff, I don't suggest anyone do this that is planning on trying to start breeding stuff and make it profitable. But I got a few different types of lizards from way different genuses. Like I had a Bronia, I had anoles, I had monitors, I had like what else did I just ran like different types of geckos. So I kind of had iguanas. I had stuff from very different areas of care that definitely a lot more work when you have a lot of different things that need different care. It makes everything way harder. So that's why I don't suggest anyone do that. except maybe in the beginning when you have a few and you're trying to figure out what you like. But that's when I figured out I really enjoyed the Anoles, and they were, I was at least good at breeding them. They were easy for me to breed, and they were just fun to watch. They gave me a lot of satisfaction, so I just kind of kept going with it, and it has spiraled into my main focus, which I'm very happy with. And that's how and now I'm like 40 species deep, and not even 10% of them, which is crazy, but who knows how many I can get by the time I die. We'll see.
You got plenty of time.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you to unpack a little bit more about, you were mentioning how you had this period of time where you had a pretty vast array of stuff from various habitats and that had various needs, and you felt like that was stressful, having to balance all the different ways of caring for different stuff. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit on that?
For sure. So it's just when you have a certain genus, or not even genus, just animals that require the same care, it's much easier to administer the same care to 100 things than different care to 10 different things. You know what I mean? So if you have an iguana, a water monitor, a crested gecko, and then a bearded dragon, the iguana, you got to go to the store every day, go get lettuce. The monitor, you got to go get rodents or chicken or fish or whatever meat you're going to feed it every day. The crested gecko, you're mixing gecko food every other day, feeding it crickets also. The bearded dragon, you're doing a mix of the lettuce and the insects. So it's like you have so many different things on your plate that it's not time efficient. It's efficient if you have a pet or two, of course, you do what you want to do. But when you're trying to go on a larger scale to make it, I don't want to say profitable, because I don't see them as my animals as a thing of profit, but in the end, that's how I'm making a living. So if you want to make it streamlined, you definitely need to have a photo. And if you want to do all iguanas, then great, go find somewhere you get wholesale lettuce and vegetables.
Yeah.
Then you don't have to worry about it. That's what I do with these. Everything eats crickets, or sometimes mealworms or dubias. And that week I go get 30,000 crickets and I feed everything. It takes me an hour 3 times a week, and much easier than, figuring out what needs this and what needs that.
Yeah.
Same with the lighting and the temperature and heat. Everything in the genus, 99% of them require the same care. So everything's set up the same way, just different sizes if there's bigger or smaller ones. And it just streamlines everything when you're trying to make it effective, and not consume your whole life, which it already does, but a little less.
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
Yeah.
There's definitely something to be said about, scale and the ability to scale up efficiently and maintain a little bit of sanity and use your time well. And because, it's so easy. I think it would be easier with a huge diversity of stuff that had different requirements and in different circumstances, so many different parameters that you needed to monitor all the time. I could easily imagine something like burnout or feeling overwhelmed or getting just inundated with so many factors to keep track of could be exceptionally challenging. I have a bit of a random question that sort of slightly pertains to what we're talking about, but is slightly adjacent, which is like heat. So the reason I'm thinking about this is you posted I think it was a video like just a few minutes ago, or like an hour ago or something, where you were talking about how you were just like, oh, I'm sweaty, it's hot, with all of those lights running for that, the length of time that they are during the day. Is that a challenge, managing the temperature and managing heat and climate, building wide, or is it not as big of an impact for you?
It's for sure a challenge. So yeah, I've kind of adapted to it, because normally in your living room, a comfortable 70 degrees, these things need like an ambient in the 80s, and then a hot spot closer to 95 to 100. So, one person keeping one on their nightstand is going to need to keep them way differently to achieve those temperatures and humidity than me, because I have like 100 cages in here. The ambient without the AC is on, and the ambient's at 84. So yeah, I'm sitting in 84 and the AC is running almost 24/7, which you can imagine that bill with a unit from the 70s on my roof.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's not, it's the summer, which sucks, but it'll go down eventually. But anyway, yeah, I used dual T5 fixtures, which each bulb is like 15 watts. So there's 30 watts over the cages, which is actually creating a lot of heat on each enclosure. So they get at the top of the enclosure, their hot spots close to 100, which is exactly what they like. And then it's the rest of the enclosure goes down until the bottom is around the ambient of what the room is. Right now it's like 84, like I said. So that's yeah, it just, like I said, since it's all the same, it's easier that way. Like if I had, there's no, like I used to have a large collection of Abronia. I lost a lot, but I also still have some, and I just had to let them go because I couldn't achieve the temperatures that they require to keep them happy, let alone breed. So that's why I definitely transitioned to something that worked all together. That's why I've also gone into some other species of like Spherodactylus and Gonatodes that share the same temperature requirements. So they like a higher ambient because they're also from the same islands, the Caribbeans, like these. So I just try to find things that fit in, because I'm not just an anole guy. I love all reptiles, so I want to have more than just anole. So that's why I try to find things that also work with what I'm doing. So
yeah, excellent.
Yeah,
very cool.
So you know, speaking so I very much relate to what you were saying about the heat and the AC, because I
can only imagine with yours need crazy heat.
It's so rough, man. I mean, there's just no getting away. You know, there's a 6 hours of the day you're just going to deal with being in 90 plus. It's just the way it is. You just got to sit there. So like all those sauna enthusiasts and stuff got nothing on me, man, because in it all day. But yeah, it's the same kind of thing. You come up with different coping strategies, and you know, whether for yourself or for the animals. I find myself cutting heat lights, you know, midday, like 2-3 p.m., and then just cutting all the basking bulbs entirely and just leaving the UV lights running, because it stays 98 degrees in the room. I mean, it's scorching in here, and none of the babies care. None of the adults care. They'll keep ripping around, even if, you know, because at 98 ambient, they're staying at a fairly peak temperature and stuff like that. So I very much relate to that. Now, the one thing that I don't want, one of the things that I feel like I totally differ with you is I'm that guy buying lettuce wholesale, right? And I can't, the only insect eaters I've really got, aside from a handful of odds and ends, are my Xenogama. And so, you know, without being too exact, I'm not trying to restrict it to this question, but like, how does that feeder bill just get so steep half the time? I mean, you don't have to, I'm not asking for specific numbers or anything like that, or just a general, what that experience is like.
Yeah, it is crazy because it just costs a lot to feed everything, especially when I have, depends how many babies I have at the time, but I usually am going through like 30,000 crickets a week.
Holy Christ.
And I mean, anyone wants to do the math about how much 1,000 crickets cost, you can just, it's crazy. I mean, I get them at wholesale prices, but still it's no joke. And it's a really big undertaking. So not only do I try to feed also mealworms and like dubias and black soldier flies and other stuff just to vary the diet, but crickets are kind of the staple because the rainbow mealworms is like 40 minutes, 35 minutes away from me. So rather than having them shipped and half of them die by the time they get here, blah, 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 I just, every Monday and Thursday, I drive out there and grab them. And that way I at least get what I pay for, you know what I mean? So it's crazy. It's a lot of money, but that's why some people are like, oh, you want $200 for an anole? I'm like, yeah, I want $200 for an anole. That was a quarter of what I spent on food this week. It's like, come on, give me, I mean, if you want something that no one else has, and it's kind of, I mean, it just, some people don't understand that I'm not just a person with a cage by my bedside. It's like legitimate, and I'm trying to make it legitimate because they're worth making legit. So it's a big undertaking, and it's been a struggle, but it's really starting to pay off, and they're starting to get some traction. So I'm happy about that.
That's awesome.
That is really awesome. I know what you mean. I had somebody say to me once who came over when I was doing this, running their Euros out of my family's home in the basement. He came by one day. He's a jujitsu friend of mine. And he comes downstairs and we open the door to the main room where I was operating. And he goes, "Holy shit, man, I was expecting like a hamster wheel in the corner or something." I'm like, "Bro, like I have an you've seen my Instagram. What made you think hamster wheel, you know?" But and then so I was going to ask about the possibility of you know, growing your own stuff, but then I realized at the scale at which you're doing it, it would be like asking me to be a farmer and grow for the Euros.
Exactly. So that's the thing. I've tried to do the fruit flies for the babies, which I mean, I can raise a tiny lizard that's a half an inch, but raising fruit flies, I just don't have the patience for some reason. And same with dubias. I would love to do dubias, but every time I've tried, there's no point because the colonies can't keep up. It's like I can use them as a treat maybe once a month to half the adults, but there's no point unless I like committed 1,000 square feet to growing insects, which at that point I might as well just go buy them. So it's like,
totally.
it sucks to pay that much money for bugs every month, but it's like, I've weighed it all out and there's no other option. So it's just the name of the game, unfortunately.
Yeah. At that scale, it's just the only way to make it possible, make it feasible.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's so interesting to me the way the challenges of doing of keeping any animal, and really obviously it's not just going to be reptiles, right? It's going to be just about any animal. I just lost power I just blew a breaker anyway. Right. The challenges of that change as you scale up, and as you know, and I feel like I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine who also is keeping and breeding a bunch of Euros. And we were talking about how he had all these concepts about the way it was going to look and the way he would operate and the way he would balance things out in his first year. And he was like, "Well, I'm going to have, you know, X number of species, and I'm going to have, you know, I'm just going to breed those for like 10 years. You know, anyway, you have all these plans, and it's incredible how quickly those plans just evaporate, you know, for various reasons, you know."
One thing, everyone, whether it's ball pythons, leopard geckos, uromastics, whatever, whenever anyone who's new to it realizes, oh, there's money in this, they're like, oh, I'm going to pair this, I'm going to pair this, I'm going to get this many eggs, and they're always like maxing out the clutch size. And they're like, I'm going to get this many eggs, I'm going to sell them for this much, I'm going to make this much, and then I'll do all this. It's like, cut it down to 20%, and maybe that might be accurate on a good year. It's like you're not accounting for every single cage, every time a light goes out, every time you feed them, the water, the electricity. You're not accounting for any of that. You're just accounting for the price of the animal and how much you're going to sell one baby. And if you get a clutch of maximum amount, it's like half
and
your
there's maximum demand to meet that.
Yeah, it's like you can make all the plans in the world, but half your animals aren't going to breed. Half of the eggs you aren't going to get as many eggs as you want. Not all of them are going to hatch. Not every baby is going to thrive. It's like, you can't it's silly to make those types of plans. Like someone came over and they looked at each cage and they know that an anole can lay an egg a week. And they're like doing all the math, 5 eggs a week, 12 months in a year, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh God, no, it doesn't work that way. It's anyone that's been doing it for a little while knows, but just everyone that's so fresh don't understand that it never pans out.
And there's the externalities that you maybe never accounted for, right? So
like you're just blowing a fuse over there.
Right, exactly. Yeah. If that
you need to go deal with that.
No, it's okay. Actually, it's only the UV lights were on. There's only like another, I don't know, 2 hours of lights. They'll be fine. It is really not going to hurt them at all. And it's only 4 cages, so it's
you got to account for a solar eclipse every now and again, you know.
Well, yeah, solar eclipse, exactly, right. Like that's actually factually true. But also, you know, for weird thing, last year I had a shelf that I had Xenogama on, like the middle part of the shelf broke. There was damage. There was rust damage to the shelf. I didn't see it, and it broke. And so it only dipped like 2-3 inches, but it slid stones because I didn't know. I never thought that the thing would tilt at all.
Yeah.
It slid and it killed 3 Xenogama. And it's like, and they were sold already. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, well, here's your money back. I feel like a doofus. And I had to deal with the fact that I lost the animals, right? So it's like there's all these weird externalities that are impossible to factor in. You know, if this breaker thing had happened in December at 2 a.m, you know, I mean, that could be real dangerous. You know, you gotta account for everything. I don't want to, it's Colorado. It gets cold enough here to kill anything. So, you know, I don't want to come into lizard popsicles the next morning. And so, you know, and fires, those things happen. I mean, everything, there's always these weird factors that never, as you said, that never go into your calculus when you're considering scaling up or considering making major adjustments or major commitments to one group of animals or one biotope or whatever it may be. You know, it's a wild thing.
Yeah.
Not entirely predictable.
Huh?
Not entirely predictable.
Right. Yeah. No.
These are living things. Natural cycles are they tend to be a little volatile.
Yeah. And well, so speaking of that, I was really curious to watch the sort of the short chronicles of that wacky little albino anole that you had. Can you tell us a little bit about, just because it's an interesting thing, how did that come up? I know I read your post and everything, but
So what had happened, I had some Papuan legless lizards. So like the Burton's legless in Australia, they're basically almost the same species. I had gotten some in, and I'm trying to do a project with those, and I was acclimating them, and they're strictly lizard eaters. People have gotten them onto pinkies and stuff like that, but the pinkies just end up being too fatty, and any other animals are not built like a lizard. So they just need those lizards to eat. So I had gone from a friend in Florida who collects. I shouldn't have said green anoles in my post, because they're green anoles, but they're invasive Cuban green anoles. So they're not carolinensis, the native to the US, but green anoles nonetheless. No one really cares. So I had gone in 100, and I just kept them in a really large Exoterra, and I figured, you know what, if I get some eggs, it'd be fun to hatch them out, because I mean, for old time's sake. And so by the time I had used up all the green anoles, I went through the enclosure and I collected 6 good eggs, just because they were, like I said, all the green anoles you ever get are wild caught and stressed, and very unlikely they're going to breed. But so I had 6 eggs, and then I put them to the side, and 5 over the next few weeks, 5 hatched, and they were all normals, and I was just raising them up because I'm like, you know, it might be cool to just breed some green anoles, like captive bred a few generations over, just for if anyone wants any. And then I'm just it was one of those days. It was a Saturday, but I had come here pretty early in the morning to just take care of stuff, because I knew I had a lot to do that week coming up, so I want to get ahead of it. And I'm just thinking to myself, what am I doing? I have all these lizards, and I'm just going in circles. This is just so crazy. What am I doing? And I look to the side, and there's this bright yellow lizard in the cup. I'm like, great. And now this lizard's dead and decomposing, and it just hatched. and I go and I look at it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's albino anole. So then I call my friends and family, like, look at this lizard. I'm so excited. And then I post about it, and it was doing pretty good. I could tell he had trouble seeing, and I tried feeding him fruit flies and crickets, and he just wouldn't show any interest in them. Normally a baby anole just attacks, and this thing, the crickets and fruit flies just crawled all over him. So I'm like, great, he's blind. So I thought maybe giving him gecko food in a cup, because anoles, actually a lot of them like gecko mix or fruit or whatever. So I thought maybe he'd smell it and he'd go up to it. No, he wouldn't do that either. So I didn't want to force feed him because he was so small. I mean, if I grabbed him, I would have just and forced him to open his mouth, I would have just crushed him. So
Yeah.
I got little pipettes like you use in like elementary science class, little plastic ones, and I would get kind of more liquidy gecko food and drip it on his face, and he would lick it off his face. I did that every day for like a month and a week. And he wouldn't really grow much. I mean, he grew a little by the time he died, but he just kind of stayed at where he was. It was just kind of keeping him alive and not really growing him. And I didn't have the highest hopes, but I thought, hey, I'll just do this as long as I can. And then just one day I came in and he was pretty lethargic and wasn't doing too hot. And I kept feeding him, and he would still lick it off his face. But then just one day I came in and he was done. And just how it goes. I've talked to a few other people who have worked with albino green anoles and albino brown anoles, and there's never been one that has survived past like a few weeks. So they just never thrive, and they're too blind. Like albino iguanas and albino tegus, it's similar. They're blind, but they have enough motivation to eat that they'll find it. This guy, he just didn't know what to do, and he had no desire unless it was on his face already. So just how it goes. But it was fun while it lasted, and who knows if someone else has luck with it, it will be really cool to see. But that's the story of the little dude.
That must have been totally wild. That experience of just seeing it in the little incubation container, like, good God, that's such a, because it's I mean, it happens, right? It happens enough to where we can all point to somebody and say, all right, this is the guy I know, and he's the one who had the first, X, Y, or Z. It's such a fun. It's kind of like a fun game because it's like random rarity. It just happens. It's cool.
It was so random, and I'm honestly glad that all the adults had been used for their intended purpose, because otherwise I would have been like keeping 100 green anoles, trying to figure out which ones are het albino and waiting for another one. So it was just a fun, oddity to happen at a cool time, and just a cool experience that I documented. And if it happens again to anyone else, it'd be awesome. But who knows? It's just cool that it hatched out of 6 eggs. One of them was albino. It's such a
pretty amazing odds.
weird turn of events, but it was cool.
Yeah, really, really epic. What a rad occurrence in your own place.
Yeah.
So are there other than the oddities such as the albino anole, are there specific animals or specific species that, out of that dramatic list of, you have so many different animals, so many different kinds of lizards, and so many different kinds of anoles, are there a handful that stand out and hold a really, really special place in your heart?
Definitely. I'll always love a Bronia, because I was one of the first people to really make a YouTube video explaining how I bred them. It was like 6 or 7 years ago, when there was like maybe 4 or 5 care videos of a Bronia. And everyone that is really heavy into them now, that has like a bunch of pairs, they're always like, oh, I can't believe, I didn't even realize that was you. The first video I watched on how to breed them was your video. I'm like, yeah, it's a pretty bad video, but at least it's cool that it's still up. Because no one knew what they were doing, and no one really still knows. But I always love a Bronia, and one day I hope to, when there's a better way to get them. A lot of people are breeding them now, but majority that came in were not supposed to be here, and they just didn't do well. And they went into, like, I don't know, if you went on Morph Market and a random kid bought it, he didn't know how to take care of it, let alone continue breeding them. So it's there's only, they really cracked down on them coming in, and there's a few people that still have them, and they're in the right hands, and hopefully they can continue that on. And I'd love to get into them again. But other than that, what I have right now, I have a lot of it. There's some certain anole subspecies projects that I'm working on that I'm really excited about. There's an Anolis roquette summus, that's the subspecies that I'm working with, and there's a locality called Macuba. I'd post on my Instagram a few times, and they're a their base color is like blue body with the green tail. And then depending on the certain lizard, they have black on the head that'll go down to the back. So just pitch black head.
Really cool.
And then some really pretty ones, they'll have black on their back and then huge yellow spots in between the black.
Whoa.
So there's just crazy variation with them. So I have 3 pairs going, and all 3 males look totally different, and it's super cool. I'm holding all the babies back. I probably have 20 babies, and I just want to grow them up and see what looks like what, and just keep trying to kind of line breed them and see what I can make out of that, because I think those are just, they're so beautiful. And I'd love to make some type of line of them that just enhances the beauty of it. It's just a tiny locality, and basically like a small town on the island of Martinique, which they come from.
Wow.
And then another lizard that I really think is going to take off, that I'm going to try to push to the masses, is the Jamaican twig anole. It's Anoles valencini. You can basically imagine it as a half the size of a Cuban false chameleon and like a quarter of the fatness. So they're really skinny
awesome.
twig anoles. They look like a Cuban false chameleon. They have more pattern and more color, and they're almost just as mellow as a Cuban false chameleon. And they make really good candidates for a pet anole. Just like Cuban false chameleons are amazing pets and have great personality, so do these, except they're much smaller, more manageable, and they're easier to breed, and they're just awesome. So I have 3 trios, adults. I actually got basically all the people in Europe that were working with them. I got most of their trios, or their adults, and I have raised up. I have maybe 30 of them right now that I'm just growing out, and babies included, that I just want to get, because really to make anything sustainable, you need probably like 5 or 10 pairs of something to keep anything going. Because if you lose a male here, lose a female here, one pair doesn't produce. It's like you can't just rely on one pair of something to make something happen. So the next year or two, I'm really going to work on those. And I think they're a great candidate for more people to get introduced to anoles, because I know a lot of people want a lizard they can handle. A lot of people don't understand that these lizards are like a dart frog. You just have to observe and enjoy what you've created, because that's also the best part about it. You can create something for them, and you can, like a tropical fish tank or a reef tank. Exactly. It's the same idea. But these are anoles that are not only fun to watch, but they're handleable relatively. So I think those will be a great candidate for what I'm doing moving forward. So I think those 2 are what I'm really excited about in my collection. Of course, I have like the red brown anoles. The thing is, the red brown anoles are so mundane to me, but everyone knows what a brown anole is. So when they see a bright red one, they're like amazed. Mm-hmm. No one understands how rare and amazing all the other stuff is that I have, even though they don't know. I'm the only one in the United States with any. They don't care because they know what a brown anole is, and they see the bright fire truck red one, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I need it." I'm like, "Okay, I guess."
Dude, oh my God.
Ain't that the way it goes?
That's probably how it is with you for the ornate Uromastics and stuff like that. Everyone just, oh my gosh, it's so pretty. And like, okay, well, I have cooler stuff.
Specifically male ornate Uromastics, it has to be a male.
Thank you. Okay, I see Roy knows this is a big gripe of mine, is the insistence that people have on if they're gonna get an ornata, it's gotta be a male. It's just gotta be, and it's like, look, man, first of all, it just doesn't work that way. Everyone can't have males. And also, the idea that you're keeping it. I mean, we all do it, right? We all keep some animals specifically for how they look. That's fine. But I really wish people would learn to appreciate more some of the subtleties and beauties and nuances of some of the females. Because maybe they're not as gaudy all the time, but they can be, and there's extreme beauty in what they are, sort of as it is, especially if you think about it in terms of its environment, the context in which it evolved. I think for me, I know this is a bit of a deviation, but like something like an ornate or any of the species that we work with, they look best contrasted against the environment in which they exist naturally, right? There's something there's something about that photograph or that experience of, you know, looking at an ornate on a hillside, on a cliffside, specifically in Israel or Egypt. And it's just like, oh my God, like there's nothing. And then there's this little jewel, this thing made of rubies and emeralds. And you're like, what the fuck is this? You know, like this is unreal. And I feel like that's true of the anoles too, but more specifically to what you're saying, I see the same thing with, there's ornata. You guys familiar with Uromastyx ornata philbii, like the subspecies of ornates? They're like ornates, but they're slightly smaller, and just a little bit different. They'll probably eventually get full species status at some point, because they're, when you have them and you hatch them and you look at them, they're so different, like drastically different. They just got to be a different thing, as different as Ocellata to ornata anyway. But philbii go through this stage of life, and you know, where the males in the first year to 3-4 years, they're crazy. They're just this cobalt blue with an orange stripe down the back. They're just beautiful, really.
Wow.
And they're great lizards. Like, I love philbii. They're wonderful. I love breeding them when I had them. They're awesome lizards. But there's two problems. They only ever get blue and orange, whereas, you know, ornata have like a dozen different looks and mixes of a variety of color and pattern. But also the males, as soon as they hit like 5 years old in philbii, that blue, that cobalt blue, darkens and deepens, and it kind of gets intermingled with either a darker blue or like a black pigmentation. And so I hate to say it, but they kind of dull out after, 5 to 8 years, because it just becomes so dark. It's not the same magnetic captive, and that's what everybody kind of aims for. Maybe, with a red anole, the artist in me would say, red is the most attractive color to the eye, right? So people are just drawn to red. They're drawn to blue because blue is rare in nature. It's just not a common color that we always see. Whereas, I don't know. So I get why people are drawn to those things, but I'm with you, Armin. It's like the richness and variety of something slightly more subtle or slightly more dynamic, like some of the anoles you were mentioning a few minutes ago, the ones that with blue and green with the black head. I don't remember the Latin because I'm bad with that, but that's so much more dynamic and interesting for various reasons. And there are lots of ways that something becomes dynamic and interesting, because if things change as they age, if they whether it's in physical appearance or color or anything. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm kind of ranting a little bit. I'll kind of stop there.
No, man, it's the good stuff. Oh no, it's just I totally agree with that. There's so many ways in which I feel like people overlook the kind of more subtle things that make herpetofauna really interesting. There's a lot of stuff that for me, like, I'm drawn to just because of like the shape of its scales, where it's like, look at this, it's so amazing. And it's like a brown lizard with like slightly weird scales.
Yes, dude. Yeah. But that's the beauty of it, right? I mean, there's really something about all of those differences. And again, I feel like one of the things that one trend or one theme I'm seeing among other people who are thinking a lot about herpetoculture generally is the development of those like sort of niche, artisanal, if you will, kinds of lanes for keepers and breeders. Like even within really, really broadly kept species, say like leopard geckos, I think it's awesome to see how individual breeders are starting to like specialize on specific looks of leopard gecko. I mean, to me, that's badass. That's just like someone who chooses to breed golden retrievers, right? It's like, I'm going to breed a golden retriever, and I'm going to commit myself to passing on this breed to the next generation or whatever it may be. And I feel like that's some of what the early stages of what we're seeing with some of these other animals, and those little nerdy reasons why you like maybe this particular lizard as opposed to this particular neon colored lizard over here. I mean, don't, it's just because it's a bright birdie, don't forget about this one. This one's just as awesome for various reasons,
There's a butt for every seat, as they say.
Yeah.
Each their own. Yeah, it's cool to see people starting to take not just breed stuff to like produce stuff, but to breed stuff to make something that they like, that they find pride in, that they that it's to their own taste, even if no one else likes it. Some people are working with certain stuff and just making it how they like it, and that's the best part, because I mean, in the end, it's for yourself, and it's to enjoy them, and it's just cool to see other people, like you said with the leopard geckos. Some people are working on their own lines of like line bred stuff that just makes a leopard gecko start to turn green, and over generations they have a green leopard gecko, and it's like crazy. It's like, whoa. One of my friends is working on stuff like that, and he's been doing it for a few years. I'm like, I never seen anything like this. He's like, yeah, because I'm doing, this is mine.
Yes.
It's like really cool. And I used to breed leopard geckos, and I still think they're cool, but I don't do anything with them now. But since being out of them for like 6 or 7 years, it's like, oh my gosh, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. So I guess another way of looking at it is, to me, it like resembles koi, I mean,
exactly.
And there's something really cool about that. It's like, I wonder that sometimes about herpetoculture specifically, or broadly rather, how much we're going to see people kind of really stick and commit to the wild type, right? So like in 100 years, what percentage of herpetoculture is going to be focused on, maybe more like naturalistic, sort of classical keeping, and then the percentage over here, what percentage is going to be more focused on, sort of that phenotypic refinement, or the developing a specific look in one direction or another.
I think the answers are pretty, if you look at the biggest things like ball pythons, leopard geckos, bearded dragons, crested geckos, it's kind of the direction it's all gone is morphs and lines and this and that.
Yeah.
The more niche or more obscure stuff like the anoles, the euros, anything that I say we, but people like us are more focused on stuff outside of the box. I think we're getting more into that mindset, even though I'm not one to be like, oh, you do ball pythons, but at the same time I'm like, yeah, I don't like morphs, even though I'm trying to make stuff look a certain way. So it's like, it's hypocritical for when people that don't work with morphs say they don't like morphs, when they're of course, when you hatch out babies, you're holding back the prettiest ones. You'd be stupid to say you're not, you're picking which ones you're keeping because of the way they look. So it's like, no matter what you're doing, whether it's even with like a normal ball python, not ball python, bad example, maybe like normal, I don't know, dwarf reticulated pythons. They don't look like the dwarfs in the wild anymore because you've been picking the prettiest ones for the past 10 generations.
Totally.
So it's like nothing looks like how it used to in the wild, unless you're starting with wild cots or F1s and stuff like that. So I think the direction will always be in the human eye, the way we like things, even if it's not ideal for the animal. I mean, people love albino stuff. Is it good for the animal? Probably not.
Right.
But it's just how it is. It's, why we do it. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Roy. I apologize if I'm getting in before you get a chance. I tend to be super talkative, but I've thought about this a lot. This idea that I always am interested in when people make statements about the animals they choose to hold back or keep, and say things like, oh, this one's the runt, or this one clearly wouldn't have made it in the wild or something. And I'm like, man, the idea that you would have any idea which one would live and die in the wild is so grossly misinformed, right? I don't mean to insult anyone, because I'm sure I've made that statement. I don't mean it in like a super critical way or anything like that. It's just that we're not even close. Like the kind of things we select for and that interest us, that we're like, oh, I'm just going to keep that one. As you're saying, it's because the animal captures our attention for some reason. Whether we say, oh, I love the way it looks, or I love the way it behaves around me, or I just like that one. Even if you don't know,
Yeah.
your selector, your picker is not the same as what nature would have picked, right? It's just never going to be. Even if you try hard to mimic that, you're just an artificial selector. It's not that big of a deal. It's just, I don't know.
Totally. And it's also not as if like nature is like a consistent selector either. It's like,
right.
It's a multitude of factors that are at play at any one time, and in some years it might be beneficial for like the runt, the slower growing, more diminutive, less conspicuous one would be the one that gets selected because it can hide better. It's like, yeah, you don't know what is going to confer an evolutionary advantage, to these things. And it's like totally hubris to assume that we would know.
Yeah.
But
yeah. That was much more eloquent, Roy. Jeez.
This is why you're the talkative one. I just have to say like one thing and then I can't talk for a while. I have to like let my brain catch up.
I don't know,
man. But I to kind of redirect us a little bit, I'm really curious, Armin, about this massive enclosure build that you just completed for Moose, your crocodile monitor. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about that process and also like how he's adapting to this new space. If you're seeing I know it's pretty recent, but if you're seeing any changes in his behavior or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I've had Moose for 2 years now, and he's really my only pet, I would say, because I mean, I still would like to get a female to breed with him, but if I never did, I don't care. I built the enclosure for him, regardless, even though it's capable of breeding them, or I would assume. But he's always had, he never had an enclosure that big, but he had like maybe like 6 foot wide, 7 foot tall, and like 4 feet deep, which he was fine in, but I don't like that for such a large lizard. He was smaller back then, of course, but as he grew, I definitely knew I wanted to give him something worthy of his size and worthy of the type of animal he is. Even this size, I feel like, is not totally adequate for a giant lizard, but because they're so active. But yeah, I just decided, you know what, gonna do it. Just went to Home Depot, got the wood, started building, and with my friends. And of course, this is with everything else in life going on. So it kind of like whenever my friends would get it, because I can't like hold up all these massive pieces of wood or plywood by myself. So I need help. So whenever I was done with my stuff, whenever my friends got off work at like 10 p.m., we'd be up till like, I don't know, 1 or 2 doing it. And then we'd have our normal lives the next day. So it's not like we committed to, I'm sure if we committed a long time to it, we could finish something like that in like a few days. But of course, we all have lives and we all just kind of hang out and just BS while we're doing it. So it took a month to build a box and then do all the cement. It's funny how when you start getting dirty and doing the cement work, all of your friends are too busy to come over. So I did majority of the cement on my own, which I cemented the walls just so it would look more naturalistic. I was gonna do, because a lot of people for monitors, like arboreal monitors, use that like white cross fencing thing so they can still climb on it. But I just don't like it. It's not very attractive to me. So, and then I was looking at universal rock, but it was going to cost, for that size of like surface area, it was going to be like 6 or 7 grand of universal rock. And I'm like, oh God, that's a lot of anole. So I went and bought the cement, and I think it cost me like $200 or $300 in cement, but a lot of labor. And just first time doing the vertical cement, making it look like rock, and it turned out pretty good. And then the huge logs me and my friends had gotten earlier, we put them on top of my car, and we got them at like 2 a.m. so that we wouldn't get in trouble driving down the freeway with these huge 40-foot log on top of my car.
I think I remember those posts on social media,
Yeah.
this massive
Entire
tree.
So yeah, that was great. That's fun. So the whole the experience of building the cage was honestly just as cool as seeing the finished product with moose in it. And he likes it for sure. I made like one part where there's a big platform where there's a lay box or a hide underneath. And he actually really likes to just hang out on that. But then it's been really cool to see him because he never had a cage where he could completely stretch out. He's definitely over 7 feet. I'm sure by the end of the year, he can be 8 feet. So it's just cool to see him completely stretched out on a log, just like relaxing, rather than, not being able to span his whole tail out before. So it's just really satisfying that, he was a wild caught animal as a baby. So it's nice to see, took him out of the wild for personal enjoyment, might as well do the best I can. And it's very rewarding. And he's still I thought maybe when I put him in a larger space, he'd get a little more defensive and not be as friendly, because he's a really friendly croc monitor. But he's still just as friendly still. It's been like a week, maybe a little more, that he's been in there. But he's adapted well, and he's just hanging out and doing his thing and still very friendly. So I'm happy with it.
Yeah, that's great.
What was the process of like socializing him to become this, relatively friendly crocodile monitor? I know that this is a species, just for those that might not be familiar, is like they're called crocodile monitors because they are basically arboreal crocodiles.
Yeah,
the dentition on them is incredible, and they're seriously powerful animals. So,
well, honestly, most as babies, crocodile monitors come in pretty. They're not like eager to bite. They're more skittish, and whereas some other species, like Asian water monitors, they're ready to bite you. Crocodile monitors come in more mellow. I don't want to call them mellow, but that's for lack of a better term. Timid maybe. So he came in pretty young, and a guy had him before me for about a year, and he worked with him every day. And just that I actually have located a few babies for a friend of mine, and he's working with them now. And it's the same process, just every day, like an hour with the lizard, just holding it, just working with it, knowing that you're not going to hurt it. And because that's the key with them, because you get bit once, and the thing is, they have like scalpels as teeth that they just cut your tendons, and you can't put them back together, and you lose use of whatever. So and so when I got him, he was already pretty mellow. He was still very jumpy because he was still young, but just constant work, always tongue feeding him so that he knows I bring him the food, and just being very slow with him, gentle with him, very little restraint. Like I only had to move him twice where I had to grab him and put him in a small area. But other than that, just try to be if he doesn't want to hang out that day, that's his call. Don't force him to hang out. So that's just kind of the way. He's still definitely a wild animal, by no means tame, but he's tolerable of interaction, and he'll wait for me to come to the glass, and I'll open the glass and he'll look at me. Not that he wants a pet. Lizards don't generally want to be pet. There's some that do, but he doesn't. But he's fine with me touching him and stuff like that. So it's so different. Everyone says they're very intelligent, but it's so different until you see one every day, and you can look in its eyes every time you walk by it, and he's more than a bearded dragon waiting for you to dump a dubia. He's like thinking what's going on. He's like, he has a mind. So it's just really, I think they are the smartest lizard. I can't think of anything I've interacted with that's smarter. So it's just, that's the kind of taming. Like I said, my friend that I had gotten, I've gotten 2 baby croc monitors for him, and they're doing really well for him. He's had them a few months, and he literally is taking like 6 months off of his work and living off of savings to raise these croc monitors because
Whoa.
Wow.
yeah,
That's
so
commitment.
he's serious about it because this is like his dream pet. I mean, there's no use in having a croc monitor that's mean. What are you're just gonna look at it? So it's like you want to at least interact with it. So he's doing really well with them, and big props to that type of stuff. But yeah, they're not for the beginner, that's for sure. And I don't know, I kind of dove in a little too eager with it because I just saw a Facebook post of someone that was moving that needed to get rid of him, and I got lucky that he was friendly. So it's been a cool experience for sure.
Of the animals that you have, would you say that like that's the one you probably have like the most like of a connection to, like a personal connection to, or soft spot for?
I would say so. Most like I'm least willing to get rid of him if I had to start getting like if all of a sudden I had no money in my bank account and I had to like sell stuff to, eat. He's probably one of the last ones I'd let go. So that's how I see things in my mind. What can I keep the longest is he's probably one of them that I would hold on to as long as I could. So
very cool.
That's a really cool those relationships with the ones that I mean, obviously all of them are thinking and feeling right, but the ones that have that next, like one little step up or a couple of steps up, and maybe at top of the heap in terms of a croc monitor, working around them, interacting with them, seeing the way they respond to the things that you do, seeing the way they respond to the changes that you make. I mean, seeing their emotions come out in ways you might not have ever thought that you'd interpret an emotion, from another animal, and you're like, oh wow, that's a beautiful, really, really beautiful thing. It's nice to see when people take something like that so seriously. That's awesome, man.
Yeah. No, I definitely I don't take it lightly, that especially when majority of them are wild caught. I hate when I see them, in a vision cage or something. Like I hate that I wasn't able to let him have an enclosure where he can completely stretch out in. I mean, really, if he wanted to horizontally, he could, but I mean, realistically, now he has so many places where he can just lounge and, enjoy. So it's just, I think it's very important when you're doing something for your own pleasure that you at least do as much as you can so they have a quality of life as well. Because why do I need a croc monitor? I don't. So, but I kind of owe it to him, the enjoyment he gives me to give something back to him. So that's how I see it.
Yeah. I think that really applies to kind of herpetoculture as a whole. It's like, at the end of the day, ultimately, we're doing this for ourselves. It's a selfish endeavor, kind of as it all boils down, but we ought to be doing things that we can to like do right by the animals and like consider their wild counterparts, and like just keep that in perspective, that this is like a living creature, that deserves a good quality of life.
That's why I don't always like to talk about animals in like profit terms or in their value monetarily, because to me, a green anole and the blue beauty anoles, which are $2,500 each right now, they still have the same intelligence and same like environmental value. And it's just like, I understand the market of like people wanting them, and that's what drives it, but it's a bummer when people they'll treat a green anole so differently than one of those. And it's like, well, don't just let your green anole die because it's a green anole. Like, still try to take care of it. I mean, it's hard to sometimes justify going to the vet and spending thousands of dollars on a green anole, but at the same time, do what you can if you can. So it's a weird line with when you're working with living things, because every life is valuable to me. But sometimes it's hard to, it comes down to the value of the market value of the life, which sucks, but it just is the name of the game with herpetoculture.
Yeah, sure. Totally. It's the struggles with when and when not to use the economic lens to, through which to view what you're doing is definitely a constant source of stress I think, for all of us, and so I mean, along that as a theme, are there any like gripes or critiques or issues that you take with anything in particular in herpetoculture, any trend or habit, or is there anything involved in herpetoculture where you say, I'd love to see that change in the next 10, 20 years?
That's a good one. I think I'd like to see the mass import of wild caught stuff from other countries change. Like, for example, Nile monitors, I just think are such a terrible pet, and they just get mass imported, and you go buy them at a show for $40, and it's like, I remember when I was little, I have a younger brother, and we would go to the shows, and I swear every time he'd come back with a Nile monitor, because he was one of those kids with spiky hair that liked aggressive stuff. And he'd feed a pinky, and then within 2 months he's telling my mom that we need to find a new home for it. And it just, now looking back, it's like, oh God, I was you don't know you're part of the problem, but it just, I wish that there's some species that just, they're easy to collect and easy to sell, and they just come in mass quantities, and 99% of them die before their first year of life. And it just sucks, because they deserve better than that. They're amazing animals where they come from. And there's so many, like, it just sucks because it's easy and affordable, and it's cool looking at the time, a $40 monitor lizard at a show, when you could be so much better equipped to take care of a Ackie monitor, even though it's 10 times the price. It's just, that's the struggle with wild caught. I'm not totally against bringing in wild caught stuff by any means. I mean, that's how we got everything we breed.
Right.
But it sucks because the price is usually less, and a lot of times the animals aren't healthy, and a lot of times the animals aren't suitable as a pet for the average person who can afford that price range. So that's one thing I have a problem with, and not necessarily stop everything with it, but kind of change or inform people better, or at least people at shows or people selling stuff like that are more responsible with disclaimers, like, this lizard's going to get 5 feet long, this lizard's going to bite the hell out of you if you don't even then it's still going to bite the hell out of you.
3 a week.
Yeah, it's like stuff like that is hard to fix, because it's immediate gain for the people collecting them, immediate gain for people bringing them in, immediate gain for people selling them, and then the animal's the one that suffers in the end. So that's my biggest gripe, probably, just certain species that shouldn't be so affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree. There's something weird about when you go somewhere and you see, as you just mentioned, like a $45 Nile monitor, or $45 baby Savannah monitor, and then 2 cages over there's a $600 ball python, or $400 bearded dragon, or $600 Euromastix, or or like whatever it may be. And there's a real challenge there experientially for anyone who knows what they're looking at. And it's lost on a lot of people that make their way into the average reptile shop, or into your run-of-the-mill reptile expo. And that's one. I feel like those are some of like the most obvious and easy critiques that anyone can, from the outside, can levy against our hobby, right?
Like green iguanas, oh my gosh, $20. It's like, such a terrible pet. Feed them have to feed them so much every day. They get so huge, they're usually not friendly. It's like, but they're still $20. It's like just stupid.
Oh yeah. Same thing with I got the Egyptian Euros, it's the same kind of deal. It's like I made the decision this year that after this year, I'm probably only going to breed them once every 2 or 3 years, if ever again, because for some of the same problems. I mean, and they're nowhere near the same level as something like a black throat monitor or something like that in
Mhm,
terms of necessity. I mean, obviously, have similar necessities, but they're not going to cost that much. They can be friendly, but they are dangerous. I mean, pork chop, he's not going to rip my hand off or rip my hand apart if he bites me, but he could send me to the hospital for sure. And
mhm.
the idea that, and if people will message me now and say, what are your Egyptians running for? And I'll say, oh, well, they're 600 plus. And they'll say, well, I used to buy them at shows for $75. I'm like, yeah, all right. Yeah, I don't care. So what? Like, yeah.
Right.
Like, you understand what this is? Do you understand what goes into it? I mean,
Yeah.
and he's not even a decade old. He's probably got 6 more of those ahead. He's probably going to outlive me, or at least he could.
Yeah.
And it becomes a thing where you're like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore necessarily, and because I like the idea that they're here and that people can have them and do well by them. Same thing with you and Moose. But it does become a question. You're like, how many of these things do I really want to produce? And why?
That's why it's good. Croc monitors used to be cheaper. Now a baby is like $5,000. Wow.
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, well, you have to be either really throwing your money around, or you have to like know what you're doing and really want to commit to this, because no one's just going to drop that. But like, for example, like the age thing, people are buying, sulcata tortoises that big.
Yeah.
Like, that thing's gonna outlive you and your grandchildren, and
Yeah.
it's gonna 200 pounds. What are you? It's like, but no, it's a baby tortoise, and it's the cheapest tortoise on the table compared to the leopard tortoise and the box turtles and this stuff. Like, it's gonna get huge, and you're not gonna want it anymore in a year, and it's gonna outlive you if it gets the right life. Usually, they don't live very long because no one even takes care of them correctly. So it's like,
Right.
It's just just even that, and those are all usually captive bred now. And it's like, sometimes, I mean, I understand there's still a need, like you said, with the Egyptians, there's still a need for them in the hobby, but it's like on a mass scale, it's like not necessary.
Well, I mean, it's just like a horse, right? I mean, horses were an absolute necessity for millennia, right? And there's reasons that there were currency in some places and food in others and transport everywhere and everything like that. But now, who the fuck needs a horse? You know what I mean? It's like some people, some places and in some industries, I understand that the horse is still a relevant tool as a domestic animal, but realistically, nobody really needs a horse, and yet there's still this entire industry around them. And I don't want horses to go away just because, or, the keeping of horses, the equestrian lifestyle, I don't want that to go away just because not everyone needs a horse. There's still a long history behind that. And
we're going to have to edit this out. I don't really want to get the equestrians against us, man.
No, I'm off. Hey, I'm all here for equestrian stuff. Like, I love dressage. I love horses are beautiful. I mean, they are. I mean, the name Philip, one of the origins of the name Philip in some language is someone who loves horses. I mean,
you're just backpedaling because you don't want to get canceled.
I don't want to get canceled. Trust me, Armin, there's plenty of time. There's lots of time for me to get canceled. This
is a real and present danger for this podcast.
It's actually, we have
the last episode before it even starts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We'll get canceled before we even launch. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Probably make us more popular, but
yeah. Well, I mean, if we're gonna talk about the horses more, it's also a niche thing where it's much more expensive to own a horse than it was 200 years ago. Everyone had a horse. Even people in poverty had a horse.
Makes money.
So now it's like horses, it's kind of a luxury, just like even a dog now isn't having. I mean, I wouldn't want to compare it to like a sports car, but having a horse is like that type of thing. Like, so it's like, but that's the issue with the sulcata or the green iguana. It's it's the low end,
Yeah.
and it's a problem, and they're easy to reproduce. So that's why it's I don't know where the resolution is, because there unfortunately will always be a demand for the beginner.
Yeah.
They don't understand, and by the time they do understand, it's too late. So it's really up to the people reselling them, which usually if they're reselling them, they are most likely in it for the quick buck, because obviously if you're breeding albino green iguanas or ivory sulcata tortoises, then you understand you're selling to a higher level market.
Mhm,
But when
mhm.
you're just importing iguanas from El Salvador, then it's you're getting them for $5 each, or selling them for 20, you're making a 400% return. Where's the reason to stop?
Right.
It's
Right.
just, yeah.
Well, and it's so funny to think, because if we're thinking about horses, cows, pigs, chickens, dogs, all their domestication sort of was driven by necessity in some way, right?
Mhm.
We needed horses for whatever, warfare, transport, farming, whatever. We needed cows for food and milk. We needed dogs to assist us with hunting and protect our
Mhm.
spaces and villages, and to help us deal with our livestock, whatever. There's a tool. But then,
Yeah.
and you could even, I'm sure cats, I guess, are sort of right in the middle, right? You have the people who say that the history of the domestication of the cat has to do with rodent control. And yeah, that's true to an extent, but they weren't like domesticated for the sake of rodent control, right? They just were domesticated because we had them and we liked them, and they sat on the laps of authors, too many to describe.
Mhm.
Mark Twain, right? I mean, it's just cats are the best because Hemingway. They were just
Mhm.
they weren't domesticated for any broader useful purpose other than to bring us some joy. And cats are often the first thing that most of us herp enthusiasts levy back at animal rights activists, which is, these things are the most destructive bastards on earth, and I've got two of them. You know what I mean? Like I don't, and one solution for someone who's a cat owner is I don't let them outdoors. I'm just,
Mhm.
unless they're on a lead and they're going to go right back inside, I'm not letting them out, right? And I feel like that's my responsibility as a responsible cat owner. And people might argue, I don't want to keep them indoors locked up. I'm like, well, I don't want to kill 7,000 birds every month, and whatever. But I feel like there's a similar dilemma with herps, which is that we just keeping them and breeding them because we enjoy them. The conservation elements of what we do and education elements of what we do and all of that stuff is very much the minutia. It's the small percentage. And I was just re-listening to the talk that Philippe de Vaugelet gave at Herpeton, and he was talking about he said it was like ethnozoological purpose. They're just here for our enjoyment and our purposes and our pleasure. And there was really something to be said for, if we're going to do that, how do we do it in a way that's responsible and manageable and obviously the first priority is to not just decimate the lives of thousands of millions of living creatures, but also how do we ensure that the ones that are going to be here in perpetuity, all of the ones that have the same fate as our other domestic animals, and that whatever those animals are is still yet to be determined. So far, we can be sure that in 1,000 years, we're probably still going to have bearded dragons, ball pythons, leopard geckos, crested geckos, corn snakes, etc., green iguanas. Some of that stuff's just going to be there, right? And what's our responsibility to those future animals as well, to raise the base standard level of care, so that way in 500 years, if I go to the grocery store, I can get my dog food, my cat food, my guinea pig food, my fish food, and my iguana food, right? Like, how does that, what is a true domestic future for what we do look like? I don't know. So Roy, and when we started this show, one of our kind of stated goals is we want to contribute somehow. We want to take this podcast and whatever it becomes, however we build it, we don't know. We have no idea what the future looks like specifically, but it would be really great to be able to say we can add something to the broader conversation, add something to the community, both here domestically within the United States and then broadly in some way. It's conversations like this and getting the insight from folks like you, Armin, that will probably inform what that ends up looking like in 20 years. Maybe we'll be able to manage enough of a platform that we can actually create meetings and conferences and I mean, I'm just totally spitballing here, but
Yeah.
because I think we all feel that about all of those animals that we all point to and understand that like these are ones that we really have to consider, because it's giving a green iguana a proper enclosure is very different than giving a xenogama or an anole a proper enclosure. It's a very different look,
Oh yeah.
For sure. And also like you mentioned, the domestication of what will be domesticated in the future. It's just crazy because, we've been with dogs forever, cats forever, horses forever. People have only really been seriously keeping reptiles in their home the last like 50 years.
Yeah.
So it's like
we are in our
totally
infancy.
a new wave in human like life that that's why I want it to keep going. And I am afraid when there's stuff like that take over, like the green iguanas or the sulcatas or whatever, that give a bad rap to that. I don't want it to give governments or powers the power to take this away from us, which is what has happened in Florida. I mean, reasonably so, they're taking over Florida, but that doesn't mean they should be taken away in Colorado, which who knows if one day they are. So that's why it's important to talk about it and figure out solutions before it's too late. Like the problem with what is happening now, USARK is great, but the only thing that happens is they react to what has already happened. They're not proactive. We need to be proactive, so we snip something in the butt before it becomes an issue and we have to fight for our lives. We do the fighting ahead of time so that it's not a live or die situation like in Florida, where it's like they are fighting to keep everything there because we let it go on too long, that there was no conversation about it. And that's what I'm afraid. I seriously am afraid of that happening in the whole United States.
Sure.
If we don't be proactive and nip stuff in the butt from now, because when a government power decides something, it's very hard to walk it back. And when there's a bunch of people like animal rights people that, I mean, animal rights are great, but when there's misinformation and people take that as truth, then it also creates an issue when people who have good intentions are spreading the wrong information, and then it gets to higher powers, and then a whole population majority has a bad opinion on something that isn't true, and it affects our hobby negatively. So I think it, like I said, important to be proactive, which I hope this podcast is helpful in that and aids in that process, because I think the next 10 years is really going to be a determining time for our hobby, just the way everything's going. So many more people have gone into the hobby recently that it's inevitable that there are going to be more things brought up about it in pop culture, that we need to address them within the people who are intensely into it. Of course, I'm not shaming anyone that has one bearded dragon or one leopard gecko, but the people who are like, this is their life or livelihood, we need to really figure out how we're going to keep this going long term so that we can enjoy it the rest of our lives, and so can our kids and grandkids and so on, and so that there can be domesticated reptiles. I mean, it's scary to think that it could never happen, because it's quite possible it could never happen.
Right. I mean, it's definitely so again, so much of this resonates with that talk that Philippe gave at Herpeton, and I've been rewatching that talk of his and some of his other interviews just to kind of freshen up, because of probably gonna, I mean, I don't want to say too much, but we're hoping to have a conversation with Philippe sometime in the next month. And so I feel like it's really important because, in his talk, Philippe mentions how, you know, on a certain level, we have to have some action, right? There's got to be some kind of actual action that takes place. Like sharing some post on social media is not really doing that much, because you're just sharing it to people who you know and who also like reptiles. However, I will say that there is is obviously a real value and benefit to individuals like yourself, Armin, and others who are charismatic and responsible and vocal and outgoing and confident and intelligent and rational, and people who can.
I don't know if I'm all those things, but
Well, I mean, look,
that's a big list.
I can't say, maybe in terms of personality, like I don't know you outside of reptiles, right? But within herpetoculture, you are definitely those things, without a doubt, like very obviously so. And I think it's talking to people like you and having people like you out there, there's a real benefit, because you're communicating this stuff in a way that is a positive. It's got a positive spin to it, right? You're not the negative Nancy talking about like I saw someone post about rescuing their bearded dragon that they just got from some pet shop. I'm like, bro, you didn't rescue shit. You bought a lizard, you know? Yeah. All right.
I hate when people buy stuff from Petco and they're like, I rescue it. No, now they have more. Now they're just going to restock. It's like.
Right. Yeah, no, it's silly, right? And so you've got the negative press, and then you've got the, quote press, and then you got like the positive press, like individuals like yourself, because the more people who know you and know what you do and like what you do and appreciate what you do for whatever reason that they appreciate it, that's people who aren't, are going to see stuff that comes up and say, well, hold on, I don't want to vote my friend Armin out of business, or I don't want to, I don't want to take away what he's up to, because it's people who I feel like in some way that's probably the main thing that anybody can do. That's like the one thing that just about anyone can do, is just set a good example, right? But then there's that next level of it, which is what I think Philippe was getting at in his talk, which is how do you take that to an organizational, institutional, systemic cohesion, right?
It'd be great to be proactive and head to Congress or whatever, even a state government, with some type of legislation that USARC has written up to secure the safety of reptiles in our households, rather than when all of a sudden it's introduced somewhere hidden in a bill, we're fighting for our lives to keep what we want going on. So it's like, and like my whole social media following is like, just so that I only work on my social media so that I can, show other people the stuff I enjoy and they can enjoy it as well. Cause you can't imagine how many messages I get every day saying, I never liked the Anoles until I saw your page. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of the point. That's what I'm doing. That's my goal. I'm glad it worked. So that's what I'm trying to, and I know anyone with social media that does stuff with reptiles, they're just trying to show them in, a positive light so other people can enjoy them. Even the large reptile influencers, I think are more net positive than net negative, because like over COVID, so many people watched Brian Barczyk videos or Jay Brewer videos, and they have been hooked into reptiles, and they say, oh, Brian is the reason I got my first snake. So it's like, even though there's a lot of people have a lot of hate towards people like that, I think there's still a lot of positive that it grows the hobby more than negatively affects. Of course, sometimes if you have a 20-foot retic biting your face, not the best image, but that's one of the things you have to take. It's like good and bad, and then you just got to take it for what it is. But I think social media is our best weapon to showcase what majority of us are doing correctly. And I think, like I said, just have to be proactive and do what we can before it's too late.
That's a really great perspective. I hadn't considered or thought about it from that angle with regard to both the influencers and to social media. I tend to be pretty pessimistic about social media. I'm gonna fill up my water bottle really quick. You keep rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really good insight. Just that it's also it's helpful to remember that a lot of people, are hooked in, by some of these
Well,
influencers that we may have critique of or whatever, but that's not necessarily like where the story ends.
Right.
Like that's
Totally.
where the story begins for these people.
Exactly.
And
So
go ahead. No, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say it's just important to remember that, and
Yeah.
that like if you I think also like for those of us who are critical sometimes of these popular influencers or whatever, who are maybe have a more sensationalist approach, it's important to like keep it cordial and remember that like these people that are coming in that are newcomers or could be totally ignorant to like why this could be problematic, and we're going to be way more receptive to rethinking these things if we're kind in our critiques, rather than just like utterly slamming these people left and right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I grew up and my age was before social media, obviously. And Steve Irwin was what hooked me onto reptiles.
Yeah.
None of these people will ever come close to comparing to Steve Irwin, but the best we have right now to like draw people in. And even Steve Irwin was the most sensational guy on the planet. There wasn't a word that wasn't like he's going like this, getting my stuff, like jumping on crocodiles. Like it can't get crazier. So it's like, yes, hate on the people of our day and age, but it's like when Brian or Jay or Kevin or Chandler or whoever is getting a 20 million view video and it's a random mom and her kids watching it, or a random grandma and grandpa watching it from Facebook, it's like it's usually a positive because now they're more interested in reptiles and they are going to want to learn more about it. That's how I started. I mean, when I was a kid, my mom sat me down in front of the TV and I'd rather watch Steve Irwin than Teletubbies or Sesame Street. So it's like I liked it, and that's how I grew my passion. And without Steve Irwin, I would probably, who knows, I'd be doing real estate or selling cars or working at McDonald's. So it's like just it's the beginning that matters. And I mean, even people that just get into it later in their life, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, they need to start somewhere. And usually it's by either someone personally or something that was shared by the masses. It's never like the person with 500 followers that's posting that they turn people onto reptiles. It's the big people, or it's the person you're close to. So we just have to consider that. And even though there are negatives, I think there's more net positive. And like I said, Steve Irwin was the man, but even he did things that are questionable. Like you look back and you watch some videos, you're like, oh man, if someone did that today, people would flame them. So it's like it's just the name of the game, I guess. Sensational works, and it's not always the best, but it's like over COVID, no one had anything to do, so just I know so many people, everyone was selling reptiles like crazy because everyone was learning all the reptiles that there were available. So the hobby grew so much. COVID was so great for the hobby because everyone was home watching reptile videos, and they went and bought leopard geckos and got them shipped to their house, or ball pythons. And now it's like, I know so many people that started becoming reptile keepers over COVID. So it's like, and people never started keeping reptiles till that. So it's like, even though we can hate on it so much, and we can like the hardcore breeders can point fingers and like nose up to them. It's still important for growing the hobby, because we don't want to just keep it a little club, because that makes us very weak and vulnerable. I think having as many people as part of it and not gatekeeping is what we need to do, just to keep it going as long as we can. Because like I said, I am personally concerned that we could lose everything. I mean, president signs something into law and it's over. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
Good. That's such a refreshing perspective, because I feel like so often that it's easy to look at those things like either the influencer effect or the social media specifically, and it's easy to be very cynical. I'm guilty of it. I mean, I just tend to drift towards the negative on that. So it's very refreshing to get that particular perspective from you. And I relate profoundly. Steve Irwin was such an example for so many, including myself. I mean, I can't imagine what I'd be doing would look anything like what it is today if it wasn't for guys like him and others of a similar ilk. And to that effect, are there any keepers, or who are the keepers, both past and present, who inspire what you do today?
I think Steve Irwin was the main one. And then, I mean, Brian, I started breeding leopard geckos because I watched how to do it on Brian Barczyk's channel.
Mhm.
That's where I learned how to breed leopard geckos. I remember he made a video on how to do it, and then he made videos on how to make money on them. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. So I did it when I was like a teenager. I was
Mhm.
like in middle school breeding leopard geckos. And also I've always been into fish as well. I don't keep very many right now just because they're a lot more work. And I mean,
Mhm.
if something happens, they crash and you lose everything at once. Reptiles are a little more forgiving.
Mhm.
But King of DIY, Joey, I don't know if you guys know who he is, but I used to watch a
he's
ton of his
amazing.
videos on like discus breeding and different types of fish breeding, and he was very influential for me, and he's still doing great on social media as well. I think, who else did I watch early on? Definitely, obviously Steve Irwin was the main one as my young childhood, but Brian, Joey, who else? I'm trying to think. I think those are really the main two that I can really remember, like paying attention to when they were going to post next. Oh, no, that's about it. Yeah.
That was awesome. I was like, who's gonna be? And then I actually
No. I was thinking, I'm like, no, that was like only a few years ago that I was paying attention. But like, I was going to say Serpa Designs. I like his stuff. But that was only more recently, the past, maybe like when I was in college, I was watching his enclosure builds and stuff like that, because I've always enjoyed enclosure builds. But I'm thinking more like when I was growing up. It was definitely Brian. Like, I'd watch videos with Brian with my buddies, and we'd watch, if you guys ever watched him, he had Chewy on and he would get bit by the snakes, and it's like we'd all laugh, and it's like, but in the meantime we're learning about reptile breeding. So it's like, you had for a middle schooler to want to watch a video about how to breed reptiles, you had to have someone getting bit by a snake. Even though it's like frowned upon, it's like it was the only way to get anyone to watch it. So it worked. And I mean, do I think it's the best way to do it? No. But is there a better way to get more than 20 people to watch the video? Probably not.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, it's and because I think that one sentiment I've heard among from a number of other keepers has been this conversation around how we usher people into the industry, like what are the ways, but I think I've heard from some folks a desire to kind of curate the ways that people enter, and I think that's the wrong idea. I mean, I really think you have to accept however someone came to this.
No, there shouldn't be any shame saying, oh yeah, I watched Jay Prehistoric's video and now I have a snake.
What?
Yeah, what
Loser, dude.
Like, you don't have to agree with everything he does. He doesn't do I mean, he's a friend. I know him. I mean, I used to do stuff for him, and it's like, he's no one's perfect. I mean, especially when the old timers been doing stuff since the 70s and 80s. It's totally different world now. We know more and we do things differently. You can't I mean, it's just like your grandma and grandpa. You can't always like tell them everything they're doing is wrong.
Yeah, sure.
But it's I don't think we should shame anyone for the way they got into reptiles. I mean, imagine if people didn't like Steve Irwin and no one would admit that they came from Steve Irwin. So it's like, it's yeah, I don't think we should pick and choose or gatekeep how you came into reptiles or why you like reptiles. It's just like, I think it should just be accepted that there's multiple ways and lots of ways to learn about it. And I don't know, I just hate when people are so make it like a club. It's like, this is like, not, every person I know that is a friend that becomes more than just like an acquaintance, I try to get them into reptiles. I mean, I don't make them own one if they don't want to, but I at least like let them hold a snake, you know, take a picture with the lizard on their shoulder or something. It's like, what's cooler than sending a picture of a snake around your neck to your grandma? It's like, you know, people pay for that. It's like, come over and I'll show you my reptiles. It's just, I think it's, we should do everything we can. Like I said, it's the majority of the people that are getting into reptiles, it's from someone who with influence, like a mass following with viral videos, that's their first exposure, or it's like someone close to you. So I think if we can share it with people, we should. And if they see it some way else, then that's great too. I think usually all exposure is good exposure except for certain things, but it's 90% of it's usually good exposure.
I think that this is also just like, I think a lot about like how, you know, 20 years ago, you know, a big point of maybe exposure was kind of more like reptile shows and expos, and like people would just go to them to be like, oh, what's this weird thing that's in my town, you know? And then maybe that would lead them to a herp society, you know, and those were a lot more common, a lot more lively than they are these days, which seems like they're kind of dying out in some ways. And in a lot of ways, it feels like as a community, we're grappling with this same thing that we're kind of grappling with society wide right now, which is like the kind of invention, this emergence of like the attention economy, and like how the hell do we like, you know, manage this unwieldy beast that none of us yet understand. It's like rewiring our brains. You know, it's like this, it's just this whole other thing. And I think that what you're speaking to, just like, it doesn't actually help to to gatekeep and like shame people for the ways in which they come to this practice, you know, in this community. It's and go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'm not saying we shouldn't constructively criticize people that are influencing. I mean, if someone's doing something wrong, there's definitely no reason not to be vocal about that, because no one's perfect, and we should make, especially to the people who are new to it, they need to at least know that some things are wrong and some things are right. And but yeah, it's the attention thing is just, it's so crazy. Like whenever I'm posting something, I have to think, am I gonna catch the attention of a 9-year-old? And if I answer no, then I don't post it. It's like but majority of my audience is like 18 to 24. But if I don't think, is like this going to catch the attention of an elementary school student? And if it isn't, then it won't work. But that's just how we all are wired now. Even like my grandparents, they're sending, now they know, I taught them how to use Instagram, and they're sending me reels and TikToks. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like, it's stupid. Everyone is, it's like,
I'm
it's
screwed.
Roy is already 73.
It's so true.
Good. You're the few of us that are gonna enjoy the rest of our lives, probably.
No, I legitimately had an experience that I'll never forget this, where I was sitting at a coffee shop in my hometown, and this guy rolls up on his bicycle and he sees me. He's like, "Oh, hey Roy, what's up, man? How you doing?" And we kind of start catching up. He's like, "So what have you been up to lately?" And I'm like, "Oh, you know, just kind of like just hanging out, you know, in my room, like reading and listening to music." And he's like, "Cool. What are you gonna do when you're actually 80?" And then he just kind of rode off. Dude, and I think about that moment often. I'm like, I need to like, I need to learn how to lighten up and have some fun.
Yeah. So one weird thing to note is that so I want to say this, and then I got a real short story, real short little tangent,
Yeah,
but I've noticed that when I am out, the last couple of years in particular, I'll be out and might be with a new group of people, and whether it's through jujitsu or through my girlfriend, fiance, or whatever it might be, we're out and about somewhere, and someone says, "Oh, he breeds lizards. You got to talk to him about. Don't get him started on reptiles because he'll keep talking." Right, that whole scene, and someone will say, "Well, what do you mean?" And I've just defaulted to be like, "All right, here's my Instagram." You know what I mean? Because it's curated and it's easy, and it's just, here you go. And one interesting thing I've noticed is when people see, now, to be fair, I don't have anywhere near the following you do, Armin. You have a massive following, but I've got about a little over 11,000 followers, and that is something that so many people find impressive at some point. They're like, "You have 11,000? That's fucking crazy." And I'm like, "It's not that crazy. Like, it's just, there are 340 million people in this country. That is less than 1%. Like, this is a very tiny, this is a teeny number of people. Like, come on, you know." It's just sort of a strange, but I mean, it's kind of cool in a way. It's interesting that, especially with younger individuals, when they see that, somehow, for some reason, that the followership makes it more legitimate in some way, right?
Literally at the my reptile show, I think it was a weekend, like 10 days ago. First time ever someone asked to take a picture with me. I'm like, I know, it was a kid. It was like a 13-year-old kid. I'm like, "Yeah, I'll take a picture with you, I guess." Like, I'm just a guy. It's like, I'm no one. I take videos of lizards on my hand. It's not like I'm a big person.
You're that lizard guy.
Yeah, it's like, "Can I take a picture with you?" I'm like, "Sure." And then another kid was like talking to me like all like this, and then at the end he's like, "Can you sign this for me?" And he gives me his card, and he's like, I'm like, "Yeah, I'll sign it." It's like, "How do you know my signature?" It's like so silly, but it's like so funny that a number of like the followers on my social media give a value to like who I am. It's like, there's like Philippe, for example, such an accomplished person in herpetoculture. No one asked for his signature when he was standing at my table talking to me for 20 minutes. No one knows who he is. It's like, we're talking about how he was the first to import this, first to breed that. And I'm just standing here and a kid's asking me for my signature. It's like, you do not even know. You're so blind to what is going on. And it's just sad. It's not only with reptiles, obviously, it's across the board with everything. Like, following is so important to younger people. And it's like, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me if you have one follower or 100 million. It's like, you're still, what you're saying is valuable. If you have value with what you're saying, I'm going to listen the same way. So it's just so funny how the younger generation just is so caught up in that. Like, it's powerful to be able to, you know, like, hundreds of people came and said, "Oh, I follow you on Instagram. I saw your albino anole. I saw this lizard. I saw that lizard." And it's like, cool. I'm so glad you see all that stuff. But it's just so funny when people put a higher value on it than it should have.
Yeah. That's extremely interesting. And it is a weird phenomenon, that's for sure. And I don't know, there's something kind of awesome in that, because on the one hand, it is great when you see someone who has that much of a following, because you're like, yes, somebody out there doing it right and getting the reward for it, right? That's the kind of attention I want on herpetoculture. But then also, it's true, like when you find someone, whether they're a herp photographer or maybe like just another breeder of some bizarre obscure thing, and you're like, you look at their follower count and you're like, "Bro, you've got 500 people following you." Like, I know you, and I'm like, watch what you do, and I can say I've been following you since before you were cool, you know, like.
Like, for example, I mean, like I said with Philippe, every reptile, he's pretty local to me, so he's at all the shows, and whenever we connect, we always talk about anoles and stuff forever, and geckos and stuff like that. But there's people like, I mean, he's old. I doubt he has any type of social media, but there's others that are like in their 40s or 50s that have still been doing it for, 30, 40 years. And like, one of the guys who I just started getting into microgeckos like Spherodactylus and Phenotypic and stuff. And he's been doing it since he was a teenager, and he's in it. He's pretty old now. And he has an Instagram account with like 100 followers. And I'm like, bro, this guy is like this guy has single-handedly kept like a dozen species in the hobby the past 20 years. And it's
Yeah.
like, no one knows who this guy is. And he only comes up once in a blue moon and he'll post on Fauna Classifieds. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's so crazy that I mean, people like me who, I mean, yes, I have experience and stuff, but this guy's been doing this like twice as long as I've been alive.
Right.
And
Yeah.
someone still thinks I'm like, they're the one asking me how to take care of stuff. And it's like, bro, you need to get your priorities straight.
Yeah, yeah. Couple of questions, I think, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm gonna try to maybe wrap this up
Yeah.
smidge. But I don't want to end the conversation quite yet. So where do you see yourself or HerpTime in the next, say, 5 to 10 years? Do you anticipate much of a change or anything like that?
I really want, my big goal is obviously to be able to just keep expanding on what I'm doing, keep breeding obscure stuff and making them popular. That's what I enjoy, making people appreciate the unappreciated, basically. I really want to just continue that. I want to get more into like promoting naturalistic enclosures. I really think that's a big part of it, like, because the stuff I breed, you're not going to be able to, with a ball python, you put it around your neck and you hang out with it while you watch TV, or a bearded dragon, put it next to you or whatever. This stuff is like tropical fish reef tank status, where you build something around it to showcase it and you're enjoying it next to in your living room. You get your cup of coffee and you watch it while you get ready for the day. So I think that's going to be one of my main focuses, is building, like, I don't know if you guys are in the reef or planet tank culture at all, but I've always enjoyed that. So the amount of money people will spend on a reef tank before they even put one fish, people are spending $10,000, $20,000 on the setup before they even put one fish in, which maybe they're only putting a few fish that total like a few $100. And it's all about the setup. It's all about getting everything perfect. It's all about letting your tank cycle with no fish in it for 6 months before you even put a fish. And then you put a coral in a year and a half later. And it's like a commitment, and you're spending the money on it because you want to do it right. That's what I really want to push with reptiles. Is that's kind of my mission statement, is they aren't just like, buy the now monitor and then go get the enclosure. It's like, no, set up your terrarium for the species you plan on keeping, get it all set up, get it going, grow in the plants, and then go get what you want, and plan out your terrarium or vivarium design based on what you want to keep. I think that's so important, rather than people picking out at the expo, oh, I like this, and then they go to the booth selling the enclosures and try to piece together what they can so they can bring it home and set it up that day. I think thought out reptile keeping is important to me. And I want to, that's the plan. And then of course I want to keep growing and keep breeding stuff. And then eventually, like, I would love to have like more of a public display where I can show off some of these things to, like, not necessarily a zoo, but like a gallery where people can come enjoy them and see that type of stuff. That's the goal. I mean, I'm happy with what I'm doing. I just hope everything continues on an upward trajectory and it all works out and I don't have to stop anytime soon.
Yeah, nice. That's great.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's really, really good.
I love the gallery idea.
Yeah, I think
that sounds fun.
That's what I'm doing. So this facility I have is 3,000 square feet. The whole upstairs is breeding. And then the downstairs, I'm actually going to do something like that. Like where Moose's cage is, I have his cage, which is 12 feet. I have another cage right next to it, which is going to be 12 feet. And then on the opposing wall, I'm going to have 6 4-foot wide cages that are 7 feet tall. So nice. I want to make, it's basically like a mini blueprint of what I want to do in the future. And I'll still be able to breed stuff in those larger cages, like my larger anoles. But I still want to I just want to showcase what people can do in their homes. And with a little extra work and planning, they just create incredible showpieces that compete with a reef tank or a fish tank. And that's the idea of the gallery.
That's awesome.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's so inspiring, man. That's a great vision. I really like that quite a lot. Roy, do you want to take the closeout question and go from there?
Yeah, sure. So, our closeout question, we ask everybody the same question at the end here. So here it goes. It is, why herpetoculture? And that can be like, why is it compelling to you? Why do you do it? You know, what about it is, what's driving it for you?
What's driving it for me is I just have an obsession with reptiles. I think I just can't, if I had it my way, I can never get enough of just being able to work with different species and just having like, oh, I hatched this species, put it under my belt, hatch this, put it under my belt. Oh, I line bred this to look this way. Now it's another notch in the belt. So it's like a personal enjoyment. And it's also just the beauty of nature that I get to, like I said, like making a beautiful showcase vivarium. It's just like to have that in your home is, or obviously I have a lot of stuff, not at my house, but just be able to see it every day. It connects you so much more with like the real world when, you know, we're looking at our phones 24/7. It's like something real that was here before us that will hopefully be here once we're gone.
Yeah.
That is so much bigger than us, that we're part of at the same time. It's very humbling to be able to be part of it and work with that type of stuff and continue it on in our captivity. And that's why I just want to share my obsession with others and hope that others don't think I'm crazy for how obsessed I am and they can also become obsessed. That's the goal. That's why I do it, because I'm obsessed and I want others to share the insanity, I guess.
You want other people to make you feel better about,
make me feel more sane for being insane.
Yeah.
I appreciate the candor. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. I mean, no one in their right mind would do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Someone had to say it.
Yeah. So it's it makes me feel a little more sane when I can suck other people into it.
Yeah. Okay.
That's awesome.
Excellent, man.
I love it.
Well, I'm gonna say thank you, Armin, so much for this, man. I'm gonna stop the recording here, but before I do, just really want to say we really appreciate you coming to do this. It's always so refreshing and educational and intriguing and motivating to talk to people like yourself doing the kind of things that you're doing. So thank you.
Yeah, totally. Where can people find you? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
This is kind of like obvious. Like, more people are going to find us through you than the inverse. But where can people find you if they want to reach out? Instagram,
TikTok, and YouTube are what I'm really working on. They're all HerpTime, HerpTime. And you can message me on Instagram is the best if you want to get a hold of me. I respond to everything unless you send me something really weird. So I'll get back to you if
that was not a challenge.
No. The next time I'm on here, I'll have to screenshot the weirdest things people send me.
We'll have a whole extra segment.
I'm easy to get a hold of, even though it's intimidating sometimes to message someone with a lot of followers. But like I said, I'm just a guy who's obsessed with lizards. And if you want to talk about lizards, I am always game. So thank you guys for having me, and so excited that you guys are doing this podcast. And I'm happy to come back to talk about more lizards anytime.
Yeah,
awesome.
We definitely have to, because we got to get you. We got to pick your brain about those polycris. Those
for sure. Yeah, we didn't even talk about those. Me and Roy are both working.
I know. I mean, we got to save that for like its own full 2-hour episode of just complete geek deep dive.
definitely.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Oh my God, that's gonna be sick. I'll just sit back and
The people
listen.
that watch it, it'll be me, Roy, and some random guy, but it'll be
Yeah,
great.
exactly.
It'll be
Yeah.
it'll be really good for us though.
Yeah, we'll like it. We'll enjoy it.
Yeah. All right.
All
here,
right.
Let me hit the stop button.